Hey Cozie Homies! Welcome back to the Zone. I'm Zheng and this is the third episode of the Cozie Close-Up. So for today's episode, what I want to do is actually to talk about introverts. So recently, I've just completed reading this book titled Quiet by Susan Cain. And this book gives us a really good insight about the inner workings of an introvert and also what makes us special and unique in this world. So how I found out about Susan Cain, right, is because I watched her TED Talk a few years ago, and it's titled The Power of Introverts. I got really inspired by that TED Talk. So she was talking about how being introverted is not a disease. Being introverted is part and parcel of human life. So 1/3 to half of all humans in this world are introverted, and we are like a minority in a sense, the unspoken minority, because in a world full of extroverts, we're always being talked over by the extroverts. So today's episode will mainly be focusing on how we introverts can tap on this inner power, and for my extrovert viewers, we can also find out how we can work together, how introverts and extroverts can work together and create this harmonious world where both types are able to work together happily. Before I begin, I wrote down some notes. I wrote down some notes about the key ideas that I learned from this book. Firstly, maybe let's talk about what makes an introvert an introvert, and vice versa, what makes an extrovert an extrovert. Looking at certain interviews and talk shows by Susan Cain, she mentioned about how she defines introversion and extroversion based on our tendency to respond to stimulus. So, like a stimulation, for example, is like a input that is given from the environment, and we humans, we receive it. So our receptor neurons and our the bio aspect of everything, so like how our body reacts to certain stimulus in the outside world, the level of sensitivity that we have in response to these stimulus kind of defines our introversion extroversion. So based on an experiment, as we can see here, a very infamous lemon experiment, the lemon juice experiment, where basically I think they do it on infant babies, if I'm not wrong. So for infants, they squeeze like a few drops of lemon juice onto their mouth, onto their tongue, and they realized that infants and even like adults, like basically everybody, introverted infants and introverted people tend to salivate more compared to the extroverted people. And this response of salivation kind of explains to us how introverts have a greater tendency to respond to stimulus to a greater extent. And whereas for extroverts, they're not as easily stimulated as introverts. And I feel like this definition kind of lays the groundwork and foundation that explains a lot of the characteristics that we introverts are distinctively known for. So if, for instance, how introverts, we are usually more inclined to reject social gatherings. We like to stay in our own minds, be lost in our own thoughts. We prefer quiet spaces. We value one-to-one conversations as opposed to big group gatherings. We like to have our own downtime and reflect on our own thoughts, think about the world and everything. So this is actually can be derived from how we actually perceive and respond to stimulus. So because how like social interaction in itself is actually a highly stimulating activity. Okay, let's think about like a social gathering. We have to read people's body language. We have to like make first impressions of everybody, especially a party of a big group of people or strangers. Then you're like, oh, this person behaves this way. So this person is this person's girlfriend. This person is that person's mother. And then you realize, oh, there are actually so many connections between the people. And then you have to try to remember faces, remember their names, and every action they do. Then you're interested to see if whether they are interested in what you're trying to say. And from there on, you will try to find, who are the people that I can click with, who are the people that I can talk to better, who are the people that I feel more comfortable with. And all these little thoughts and processes, right, is actually highly stimulating for introverts, because introverts, they get very sensitive to this kind of nuanced details, and they will just kind of, some people have like mental breakdowns and everything, like, oh no, there's too much information to process. And maybe that's why a lot of introverts don't really enjoy going to big social gatherings, because social interaction in itself is overstimulating for many introverts. And that is not to say that extroverts do not feel sensitive to these kind of things as well. But the thing about extroverts is that they are able to, they do not feel the intensity of the stimulus as greatly as introverts, and they're able to kind of better multitask, and they thrive actually on this kind of social interaction. They feel joy, they derive happiness from interacting with people and receiving all this input from the surroundings. And this is actually one of the biggest defining characteristics of introverts and extroverts. And what the book talks about also is what reward system do introverts and extroverts survive on. So they say how extroverts tend to be more reward driven, I think that's the word, reward driven, and introverts are more threat driven. So you think about how introverts tend to think about the worst case scenarios. They always think about, oh, what if this thing happens, what if that thing happens, and it kind of goes and makes and kind of explains why a lot of introverts tend to be more anxious than extroverts. So introverts will always think about because they are very sensitive to all these threats and stimulus in a sense. So their brain is always in this defensive mechanism. They will always treat many situations to be more deadly and harmful than they actually are. And as for extroverts, they're reward driven. So whenever they get rewarded, whenever they get benefits from the actions that they do, they actually get more motivated to carry on. So for example, they start on this project, and then afterwards they actually got some results, and having these tiny little results make them feel more and more excited to push themselves forward and move ahead. And as such, extroverts tend to take more risks. So like how extroverted investors tend to place bigger bets because they are willing to go for higher risk activities, and because they know higher risk activities usually lead to more satisfying rewards, and this kind of drives them ahead. And as for introverts, we tend to be more analytical, and we think about, oh, maybe having activities that are too risky isn't actually good for us, and we will want to turn ourselves down, take a step back, and analyze the situation first before we go ahead. And actually this situation is also quite prevalent in the animal kingdom. So Susan Cain also mentioned about this experiment that a scientist did on a group of fishes. So they placed this group of fishes in a fish tank, and the scientist placed a big fish net into, not really a fish net, like a trap I think, into this tank full of fishes. And in this species of fishes, right, there are also like fishes who are more introverted and more extroverted. So the more introverted fishes, when they see this big net that came in, they're like, oh, this is foreign, this is strange, and they don't dare to go ahead. So they all swim to the edges of the tank and stay away from the trap. But for the extroverts, because they are greater risk takers, they are more willing to just without second thought, they just go straight to the trap and try to find out what exactly this trap is. So they went on and explore and see, oh, so this is a trap, is this a new place, a new source of food? Yeah, and this kind of like shows even in fruit flies also they exhibit similar characteristics. So introversion and extroversion is kind of like deep in our psyche. We are prone to these kind of innate primitive drives that actually defines our characteristics. And however, based on after this experiment, right, so you have all the extroverted fishes got caught, and the introverted fishes are actually safe. However, when we bring all those fishes to a separate new environment, they realize that actually extroverted fishes are able to adapt to their environment and surroundings better compared to the introverted fishes. So in a new environment, because how extroverted they are less sensitive to stimulus, they are able to overcome the initial fear of uncertainty and they just go around and explore the place, and then make themselves more comfortable. However, for the introverted fishes, they do not feel that comfortable in a new environment, and it takes them a much longer time to warm up and get themselves familiarized with the place and happily live in that place. So yeah, they monitor this based on their eating habits, how the fishes move about, how they interact with other fishes. So essentially it is important for survival because if, for example, introverted people might die off in new environments, but extroverted people might die off in higher risk environments. So having a pool of the organisms that actually decide to stay alive because of their own innate characteristics would help to sustain and continue this lifeline of the species. Yep. So this is essentially how our inner wirings of our bodies are, I suppose. And one thing I want to talk about is about actually how a lot of people kind of mistaken shyness and introversion to be the same thing. And actually they are quite different. I mean, they do overlap, but in essence, they're actually two different things. So introversion, as I said, is the tendency to respond more sensitive to stimulus. But shyness, on the other hand, is more of I once used the word social anxiety. They have this worry when it comes to going to social events or doing social interactions with other people. Which means actually some introverts, they are not shy. So it means even though they're introverted, they kind of want to, instead of going to a party, they want to read a book at a corner, they want to just stay at home. But when they need to interact with people in certain events, they are able to do so without this constant fear and doubt of their own abilities. But for shy people, on the other hand, you could be extroverted and shy. So you love social interaction, you love to bond with people, but then you have this fear of like, what if this person don't like me? Or what if I'm not good enough to fit into this group? And all these kind of factors makes them a shy person. So there could be a shy extrovert and there could be a unshy introvert. So yep, they are not two entirely mutually exclusive entities. Yeah. So before I continue, I'm just gonna take a sip of our today's drink. We have some hot tea and lemons because in our theme of the lemon juice experiment. So yes, let's take a sip before we move on to the next part of this video. Well, I guess I'm the population that salivates more after drinking this. Okay. So now that I explained to you what makes an introvert, we will now move on to why are introverts always struggling in this society. So I believe many of you introverted audiences who are watching this, you all have in some point in your life felt like, oh, I'm not speaking up enough, I am too quiet, I am a very shy person and everything. And this comes with very negative connotations, probably brought to you by your parents, your teachers, your friends and everything. So I can say for myself, I suffered from this kind of experiences before. So sometimes like big family gatherings during Chinese New Year or whatever, and you go on and meet relatives that you only meet once a year, and you don't feel very comfortable speaking up to them. And then other people will be like, oh, why are you so disrespectful to your other relatives? You should talk to them, make more initiative to talk to them. And they say like, this bunch of kids, and I just throw all the bunch of kids to one room and immediately they all become friends with each other. But that did not happen to me because, it takes me very long to open myself up. And because of that, I don't know how many times I've been scolded or I've been, lectured about to make the initiative to step up and talk to everybody. Even in class, sometimes teachers also say, why am I not speaking out enough in class? And I believe many introverts take this too negatively. They think like, this is a very bad part of my personality. Like I cannot let this continue on, And we always think like how extroverts always thrive in this environment where, they get to speak up without shame, without fear. They feel very excited and motivated to just talk to people. And I believe as human history progresses, we are progressing into this society that favors extroverts, or known as the extrovert ideal. Because how back then in ancient times, where we're still in the hunter-gatherers society, hunting and gathering in small villages is actually quite an introverted activity to do if you think about it. And afterwards, you move on to the agricultural revolution, where people move on to do agriculture, they do farming and everything, and they farm for their own sustenance, and any extra crops they will use it and sell it to other families and other villages. So in essence, these are actually quite introverted activities because it's just small groups of people and it's just families to families, people have known for their whole lifetime. But as we move on to this digital age, the scientific revolution, and now that businesses and marketing yourself is like the most important and key factor that determines your survival in this workplace, we are moving on to this extrovert ideal where many people have to fearlessly put themselves out into the spotlight and get enough exposure, get many connections that will help in their business, and in essence give them a greater edge, a benefit, an advantage to survive in this society. This makes a lot of introverts struggle in this world because they will think, oh, I'm not putting myself out enough. I am not having enough social connections that would put me at a better placing in a job. So because of this, right, a lot of people start to think, oh, actually, why are we introverted? Can we become extroverts in the future? And all these things, right, leads us to the fundamental question of, is introversion nature or nurture? So, is it part of our temperament, or is it like after you're born and societal experiences change you that allows you to change your position in the introvert-extrovert spectrum? So actually, I see this Venn diagram, right, which says how there's temperament and there is your life experiences, and when they intersect, it forms your personality. So your personality, there's this psychologist, I forgot his name, then he talked about this thing called free trait theory, where he says about how actually, our personalities are actually not fixed from birth. So, from birth, okay, your genes are fixed. You have certain hereditary traits that you can't really change. So, some genes tend to, make yourselves in a more, to have certain attributes, while certain genes make you exhibit more extroverted attributes. But what free trait theory is telling us is that because based on our inner wirings, based on our genetic makeup, we tend to do activities that works in favor and in line with the genes that we are born with. So introverts, people who are born introverted have this tendency and this passion, greater love and greater passion to do things that are introverted in nature. But the thing about free trait theory is that as we grow older, we realize that sometimes being too introverted and being too extroverted might not actually be the most desirable outcome that we want to get ourselves out in this society. So you don't want to always just lock yourself up inside your own room for the rest of your life, not going out at all. And as an extrovert, no one would like someone that keeps talking over other people and talks non-stop and doesn't get any work done. As we grow older, we realize that actually we can change our, not really change, but we can take away some of the negative parts of our personality. We can add in, learn new skills that adds on to the positive side of our personality, and this gives us a good balance of attributes that allows us to survive in this world. So like what Susan Cain mentioned, like humans are just this mismatch of characteristics and personality traits, and we pick and choose what we want to get the best out of our own lives. Yeah. So one thing about introverts is that because we tend to be more anxious, we tend to be more sensitive, and we like to think about all the horrible things that could happen to us, we tend to be better at self-monitoring. So what self-monitoring is that introverts tend to be more introspective, and they will be able to look into themselves and try to analyze and find out what specific parts of them are lacking and how they can improve themselves to become a better version of themselves. So with self-monitoring, some introverts might adopt something called pseudo-extrovert behaviors to be able to get themselves a better position and footing in this world. So sometimes being too quiet isn't necessarily a good thing all the time, and as such, some introverts kind of force themselves to speak up. And look at all the people, the introverts who speak up. There's like Barack Obama or like Steve Jobs and everything. They are all introverted by birth, but because of their love of their job and the benefits that they can see that they can bring to this world, they decide to adopt pseudo-extrovert behaviors to put their ideas out to help the world, help the society in whatever ways that they can. So yeah, so even though introverts, we have our own struggles, I believe extroverts have those struggles too, and all of us have our own struggles. We just need to find the time to get a good balance of certain personality traits that we want to adopt and bring to our own lives, and try to expel negative attributes of yourself which you think can be improved on. Right? Last but not least, let's talk about how introverts can thrive in this world. We all know introverts, most of the time we are being disadvantaged, at home or in school or in the workplace. In meetings, no one wants to listen to you because you're too soft. No one can even hear you. Or in school, how certain projects require project work, collaborative group effort, and you are not that good of a group or team player. And sometimes, class participation is graded sometimes, and all these kind of things really just scare introverts. So actually, as what I was saying, extroverts and introverts, we get to pick and choose what attributes we want to acquire and help us to survive in this world. So introverts sometimes, we have to learn how to speak up. We have to learn how to be more flexible, adaptable, and learn how to keep our anxiety in control. Sometimes we just try to think ahead, think logically, and see whether actually our worries actually valid. Okay, not that all worries are invalid or anything, but it's just trying to say how introverts, we can try to regulate our thinking and improve on certain ways that we view the world. And yeah, so just like how extroverts, sometimes they're being forced to go into an office and work on their own report for like 5 hours alone in solitude. Introverts can also push themselves, push their boundaries. And I believe it's a healthy thing to do for everybody. We all push our boundaries, sometimes get out of our comfort zone and be the best version of yourself. One thing about introverts is that because introverts, we are very sensitive to stimulus, right? So we kind of drain our battery very fast. And that's why introverts, we have something called restorative niches. We have to try and find ways to restore our energy. So so maybe you can put yourself out and say, okay, you know what, I'm just going to go for this dinner gathering, I'm going to go for this big meeting and whatever, right? But the thing is, remember to take care of yourself, because your body, by genetically makeup, right, you aren't exactly the best suitable candidate for this kind of activities. So having, after all these social interactions, if you feel exhausted, if you feel tired, remember it is okay to take breaks. It is okay to say no to some events and activities, and remember to take care of your physical and mental health. So restorative niches could refer to taking breaks in solitude, finding time to catch a fresh breath of air, because sometimes when everything is too overwhelming, just take deep breaths and stay calm. Yeah. So there are many ways that can get about all these kind of challenges in this society, in a world that can't stop talking. Yeah. So for introverts, I believe we can thrive in this society regardless of our own inner makeup. Yeah. And we look at in history, right, there are many power couples that actually they are like they're not both introverts and they're not both extroverts. Basically, it's a good mix of introverts and extroverts. So the most classic example is Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. So we all know Martin Luther King for his very famous "I Have a Dream" speech, where he really brought about massive change and revolutionary changes in society and history. And as for Rosa Parks, she's a very quiet, soft-spoken lady. And however, just her tiny actions lead to big, massive changes in society as well. So just her action of not giving up her seat in the bus, and all these tiny things that introverts are known for. Introverts are known for tiny actions that they do. Introverts are known for very nuanced, well-planned, well-thought-out, and small activities that they do, right? That speaks for themselves. They're speaking out larger than life. As such, introverts can sometimes consider partnering with extroverts to get certain things done. So having a good mix of extroverted, introverted teammates and leaders, they actually have to bring a company, an organization to greater heights. Having extroverts who are being able to take risks, they're more willing to explore new ideas. And introverts will keep them with checks and balances. Introverts give the more analytical side to the discussion, provide greater insights that they can see from their perspective. And through this, right, I believe you can get a better outcome overall. Yep, everybody can find ways to excel in the society that we live in. So, regardless if this society is biased to the extroverts or biased to the introverts, I believe that all personality types, ultimately, we are flexible enough and we have a really complex brain that allows us to find ways to get out of difficult situations and sticky positions that we are in sometimes. I believe all of us, sometimes we should take some time to explore and find out about our personality traits, our personality types, and from there on we take action that best suits our own preferences. So knowing that we are introverts, we can find ways to get about our weaknesses and push our strengths forward. Extroverts can do the same thing too. And one revolutionary change that this book brought about, right, is something called the Quiet Revolution, which in essence, right, is that they are trying to push for ways in which society, businesses, schools, organizations can find ways to empower or encourage introverts to step up and take the lead and put them into the spotlight. Ironically, right? But basically, right, like having this awareness of introverts, their preferences, and how all of us can work together regardless of our personality types, I believe it's a very enlightening fact that we all of us should look into. And do not let our own human nature determine how we ought to live. Okay, so if you're born introverted, born extroverted, it doesn't matter. As long as we are all in this, we have a passion to change the world, we have a drive to do whatever it takes to benefit everybody, just go ahead, we can find ways out. We humans are one of the most adaptable creatures on earth, I suppose. Yep. And to end off this video, I want to share with you a really beautiful quote that Susan Cain wrote in the summary, the ending chapters of this book. So in essence, what she said is, the secret to life is to put yourself in the right lighting. For some, it's a Broadway spotlight. For others, a lamplit desk. And I believe this is a really beautifully written. So all of us just needs to be the right lighting, and we can excel in our own fields, regardless of our own disabilities and our own limitations. With this newfound awareness of our own personality traits, we can find ways to succeed and be the best version of yourself, as I said. Yeah. And I hope all of you have benefited from today's video. And yes, I believe this is a topic worthy of discussion, because I feel like introverts are always being misrepresented. People always misunderstand introverts. And yeah, if you have any questions, or if you have any new ideas or insights that you want to discuss about, please leave in the comment section below, or you can just privately talk to me on Instagram DM or anything. I'm very open and excited to hear your inputs, and we can discuss about this topic together. So yes, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and yes, hit the notification bell to keep up with all my other videos, and hope to see you guys soon. Alright, see you guys. Bye.